This episode of Film Stock Reviews, I'm reviewing Ghostbusters Afterlife. It is the third movie in the true sequel franchise after Ghostbusters and Ghostbusters 2, and this movie is great. It's set 32 years after the events of the second film, and a single mother and her two children moved to a small town in Oklahoma. And we find out that this mother and her children are related to Egon Spengler, and it's Egon's daughter and grandkids. And they find out that there's a legacy that Egon left behind. They don't know what the reason is behind it, but then all of a sudden they find out and they uncover secrets that they thought Egon was weird. Nobody in the town talked to him or knew him, and basically he left the Ghostbusters and he left his family in order to do something. We find out in the beginning, right off the bat, in the beginning of this movie, it starts off and it's right in your face. Egon is doing something where he has to trap a so-called ghost, so to speak, and we find out later that who this ghost is. And evidently, he dies of a fatal heart attack, and then it starts the events of the movie. The movie is directed by Jason Reitman, Ivan Reitman's son, the director of the first two Ghostbuster movies, and this movie stars Carrie Coon, Finn Wolfhard, McKenna Grace, Paul Rudd, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson, Andy Potts, and Sigourney Weaver. Now, I do want to say that in this movie, the one character that keeps this movie moving forward is McKenna Grace as Phoebe Spengler. She is one of the smartest characters I've seen written in any movie possible, and she is a true spitting image of Egon. Of course, it's perfect casting choice, and it's really, really heartfelt, and it's really, really great. Carrie Coons as the daughter is really interesting. She's like the mother that's trying to put everything together. She thinks her father left her something, but he didn't, and then all the while she's trying to understand and keep the family together. But Phoebe is always the one that's going out and doing scientific things. She's smart. She's like her grandfather. So she goes to summer school and she meets a young boy named Podcast. These two together, Phoebe and Podcast, is hilarious. You could say that Phoebe and Podcast is a simultaneous look at what Egon was and what Ray is from the original Ghostbusters, because the character of Podcast, Logan Kim, has that hair that like Dan Aykroyd's character had in the first movie. It's really, really great. It's really, really good, and these two are definitely the comic relief. Finn Wolfhard is the brother. He's trying to fit in. He starts working at this restaurant to impress a girl in the area, and so his character was in and out, but not needed. He does have some action sequences in it, but I felt like his character was just put in the movie just to, be put in to fill space and time. Even the girl that he's talking to as well. But other than that, this movie really moves forward in the second act and finishes off really strong, because we find out the reasoning that Egon spent time in Oklahoma at this farm, and he was preventing the second coming of Gozer the Gozerian, the villain from the first Ghostbusters movie. And we also see the return of the Gatekeeper and the Keymaster. These demon dogs are the scariest shit you've ever seen in any movie possible, and seeing them up close again in the manner of how they were with the CGI mixed with the puppetry looks really scary and really, really good. They look like they're the same from the first movie, just upgraded with different designs, but it's really fun. And Gozer the Gozerian, holy crap. Gozer the Gozerian, if you didn't know, was played by Olivia Wilde in this, but it's in an uncredited role. But it's like you could see Gozer the Gozerian just coming back, wanting to take over the world. And not only is, we find the backstory of how certain things happened over the course of these 32 years that, Egon left the Ghostbusters and left his family to come here. It's because Egon wanted to stop the world from ending, and people thought he was crazy. His friends thought he was crazy. So there is a scene where Phoebe and Podcast find a ghost called Muncher, and Muncher is somewhat looks like Slimer, but it's different because Muncher just starts eating these steel beams and the iron that's in everything, and they go on this wild chase through the little town after Muncher. It's a fantastic scene. It's full of action. It's well done. The comedy is great, and it's really, really interesting how well it was written. So they capture the ghost muncher, and then they're put in jail. So Phoebe gets this one phone call because she's in prison. So who does she call? She calls the Ghostbusters phone number, and Ray picks up the phone, and we find out the reasoning of what happened with the Ghostbusters. Before the cop tells her that the time is up for her phone call, she tells Ray that she's Egon's granddaughter. So you see Ray all of a sudden feel remorse and real, sympathy for what is happening, and has to figure things out. So once we find out what's happening, we go into this, story of the lore of everything. And evidently, Ivo Shandor, who is the leader of the cult of Gozer, who is actually buried and entombed in this so-called, underground mine. You see the statues, you see everything. And then we find out that the reason that Egon was doing all this was to stop everything from happening. And Ivo Shandor is played by J.K. Simmons. Ivo Shandor, the character, is mentioned in the first Ghostbusters movie. If you pay real attention really closely, when Dan Aykroyd's character Ray does a little story and tells what's happening with Gozer and who Ivo Shandor is. And Ivo Shandor is also the one who built the apartment complex in the first Ghostbusters movie, where Sigourney Weaver's character lives, and the ending of that epic movie takes place. So basically, this mine was basically a temple that was dedicated to Gozer. Her spirit's in there, her whole thing is in there. So as usual, as you know, the gatekeeper and the keymaster have to come together in order to make Gozer rise. So the keymaster and the gatekeeper take possession of Paul Rudd's character and the mother Carrie Coons, and they just all of a sudden just start, it's a great scene, and this is where everything just starts happening and picks up. And then we find that everything is happening at this farm. And in the beginning of the movie, we find out that why was Ray there? Well, Ray was trying to trap Gozer. But this whole farm is one big ghost trap. Yes. We find out that Phoebe realizes that everything is one big ghost trap, and it was done to catch Gozer and to stop the world from ending. So Ray arrives with Peter Venkman and Winston Zeddemore, and it just goes crazy. It's just great homage to the original, which is really, really fun. It's great homage to all the, the pop culture references that we remember from the first movie. There is a scene where Gozer asks the three, "Are you a god?" And all of a sudden, you realize, okay, Ray has to say yes, because if he doesn't say no, we know what happens. So finally, Ray does say yes, and then Winston's like, "All right, there you go, good answer." It's a really nice touch to the first Ghostbusters movie, and it's a very touching scene because Phoebe herself is battling Gozer, and all of a sudden, a manifestation comes in, and you see Egon Spengler. You see Harold Ramis, who posthumously appeared as Egon. I'm getting choked up just talking about it because it was so great to see Harold Ramis in this movie, even though he passed away. And this movie was made in his memory and his dedication, and how the dynamic between the grandkids and the grandfather and the mother and father were really, really good. I loved what they did, and having Harold Ramis' likeness in it was great, because it wouldn't be a movie without him. And seeing all four of them once again in their costumes were so good. I absolutely loved this movie from start to finish. And not only that, Annie Potts does return as Janine Melnitz. She has a small role where she comes in and she introduces herself to the family. But really, like I said, McKenna Grace as Phoebe really drove this movie forward. And I really want to see more of her in a lot of movies, because she's a phenomenal young actress, and you're definitely going to be seeing more of her. And then seeing the Ecto-1 again, so good. Hearing the Proton Pack come on, amazing. Hearing those sirens with the Ecto-1 was so good. Seeing it drive on the big screen again after 30 plus years was fantastic. And not only that, at the end, they play the Ghostbusters theme song from Ray Parker Jr. The nostalgic factor, the references, the aesthetic look and feel of it all was so good. It was really, really done well. And there is a mid-credit scene and a post-credit scene. The mid-credit scene, we see Venkman and Dana, who are now revealed to be married, and they're playing with Venkman's ESP cards and the shock machine. And Dana tests Peter Venkman, Bill Murray's character, is like, did you mark these cards? Do you know what these like? And so Peter Venkman literally gives up that he only used to shock the male students. So Dana just keeps shocking him. It's really a nice callback to the first movie. It's really great. And there is a post-credit scene where we find that Winston Zeddemore now is a wealthy businessman. He's helping out, the family of Egon's family, and he brings in the Ecto-1 and is just, going to, rebuild it, clean it up, But then at the end, the final shot of this end credit scene, the final shot of the movie, we find that a red light is shown blinking once again of the Ecto containment unit. Yeah, the Ecto containment unit is once again blinking red. If you do remember from the first movie why the Ecto containment unit was blinking, then you know what's going to happen. So this could leave it open for a sequel. And you know what? Give me one more movie. Give me one more movie with Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson. And even bring back the cast of McKenna Grace, Logan Kim, Paul Rudd, and Carrie Coons, because they did a phenomenal job. I want to see one more movie with them who have more of a role in this, film for the fourth film, the true fourth film. So it'll be Ghostbusters, Ghostbusters 2, Ghostbusters Afterlife. And if they do Ghostbusters 4, let me have it. Because, even though Ray, Peter, and Winston were only maybe in the whole movie for about 15 minutes in the end of this movie, it was a nice touch, and it was really well done. It was great to see them on screen again, because we grew up with these characters. We know who they are. We know the nostalgic factor. We know the references. And this movie, going back to Gozer, the gatekeeper, the keymaster, Ivo Shandor, and how everything was done, we get a backstory of what everything is, was really fun, and I absolutely enjoyed the shit out of it. I don't see how critics are giving this movie bad reviews or bad-mouthing this, because it doesn't make any sense at all. Of course, Rick Moranis did not appear in this movie because he was still retired from acting, but I feel like if he did come into it, he would have probably played a small role like Annie Potts did, or at Sigourney Weaver, we only saw her in the mid-credits scene. But listen, hey, this movie was really well done. Kudos to Jason Reitman, kudos to the filmmakers, because this was really good. And this is the true sequel. Even though it is the fourth film in the franchise, this is the third film in the true original, context of what the movies are. Ghostbusters in 1984, Ghostbusters 2 in 1989, and now this, Ghostbusters Afterlife, or Ghostbusters 3 Afterlife. For me, Ghostbusters Afterlife gets 5 out of 5 stars. Let me know in the comment section below what you thought about Ghostbusters Afterlife. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What did you think of it? And what do you think about the nostalgic factor to it, and did you like it? So let me know in the comment section below what you thought about this movie, and I'll see you guys in the next review video.